but that recording will be posted on the YouTube channel. The agenda tonight is shorter than our usual agenda. That's primarily because most of the district functions that would ordinarily require the commission's participation are pretty much shut down now. All the boards and commissions and the council hearings are all suspended during the coronavirus emergency. So we have posted the agenda on our website. We put it on the various listservs. Is there any modification or change anyone wants to make in the agenda, draft agenda? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda indicate by saying yes.
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 Okay, unanimous then. All right, I have just a few short announcements, and we're going to try to keep the announcements short tonight. The first is with regard to COVID-19 information. I think probably everyone is aware that the district has a website that's coronavirus.dc.gov. That contains a lot of information, but I would really also suggest that people look at Jerry Malletz's email, his website. It also contains an enormous amount of very, very helpful information that's really tailored to our community. So that's jerrymalletz.com. The second announcement is with regard to the DC primary that is being held on June 2nd. The Board of Elections is encouraging everyone to use absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. Anyone can use a mail-in ballot and can send it in. And that will be much safer and more efficient for the entire process if we have as many people as possible using the mail-in process. There will be some 20 voting stations that will be open immediately before the June 2nd primary and then on June 2nd. But if at all possible, you should request an absentee ballot. You can do so at vote for, that's the number 4 dc.com. And there's a 2020 primary voter guide on the Board of Elections website. There will also be that specific link will be in our minutes. And that will also give you some additional information about voting through the absentee process. The final day to request a mail-in ballot is May 26th, and the ballots must be postmarked by June 2nd, and the board must receive them by June 9th in order to be counted. And I will also mention that tomorrow night, there will be a forum for the candidates for the Ward 4 council position in the Democratic primary. There are 3 candidates who are running, and they've all indicated that they will be at the forum tomorrow night. It will be another Zoom meeting, a Zoom webinar. And so it will be possible for anyone to join in and listen to that. And they can also submit questions in advance. I think the time period actually for submitting questions has already passed. So that's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And if anyone is interested in getting the link to that Zoom meeting, if they'll just ask a question or a chat, we'll make sure we get that in for those who want it. And finally, with regard to the 2020 census, we've gotten some results from the census already that results in the sense that how many people have actually submitted their census forms online. And in our neighborhood, the return rate online has been very, very good. At least that's what they say. It's about 70% or more. And that's very high at this stage in the process. But if you haven't submitted your census form online, you can go to my2020census.gov and you'll find there the way that you can submit your census form. Okay, instead of the normal community announcements that we've had in the past, we've asked the representatives of Mayor's office and Councilmember Chase and Councilmember Todd's offices to submit their announcements for inclusion in the minutes, and we'll certainly include those. Does anyone else wish to make an announcement? If you want to raise your hand, please.
I'm
Chris?
not on video, so, oh.
Okay, we'll let Chris start. First of all, Chris, you have
Yeah, I just wanted to say how easy it was to do the census form. I mean, it was, I got an envelope in the mail with a number, and you just went on the website, typed in the number, and I was through it in 2 minutes. So, and I'm not the most computer savvy person in the world, so it was very easy. The only other thing I wanted to mention is I've been working on with 5301, 5303 Connecticut, and we've had some issues with the site being unsecured. And we've gotten DCRA has been responsive, and they came and they talked to the contractor, and the site is not secured. So that project is actually moving along fairly reasonably.
Good. Becky, you had an announcement?
Yes, I just want to remind people that the farmers market on the corner of Broad Branch and Northampton Street is up and running, but to get in, you have to have a mask, and it's one-way traffic, and the number of people will be limited. So if you go to the market, please be patient. But you won't be allowed in without a mask, and the health department has been there monitoring it.
Good, Jerry?
It's on Saturdays, sorry. Saturdays, 9 to 1.
Jerry?
Yes, I just want to make note that I've gotten a few alerts. I wouldn't necessarily say they're complaints from residents that deal with major construction sites or lawn maintenance, mostly leaf blowers, that they're working side by side, no face masks. Just noting that there's a lot of that going around. People are noticing it, and I guess there's no enforcement, so it's just something to note.
Well, if the people who are having their lawn blown or cut and all that notice the people that are doing the work don't have face masks, they should come out and say something to them. I will say that the company I use is they all had face masks.
Yeah,
So,
maybe they should, but it doesn't seem to happen.
Well, I think they can also make a complaint for construction work, certainly, to DCRA, because DCRA is supposed to be enforcing the social distancing requirements. And whether they'll get somebody out there in any timely manner, I don't know. We had one construction project that was going on in my S&D. It was supposed to start actually last week, and the neighbors had some concerns about it, and particularly about the social distancing and about some of the other disruption in the neighborhood. And we talked with the developer, the contractor, and they agreed to put off the start of that construction until early May and to reassess at that point, which I thought was really a great move by the developer to consider the needs of the neighbors.
Well, one of these two sites, DCRA was notified. Nothing's changed though.
Abe, did you have something too?
Just two announcements. The first is I would just encourage people to visit the Oregon Avenue construction project website. The project continues. The lanes have been switched, so that now the northbound lane is open north of Beach, and the southbound lane is closed for construction. And you can find out more information about that project at OregonAvenueProject.com. It is continuing even during the public health emergency. And then the second announcement is that if you are an attendee at this meeting right now and you would like to ask a question or communicate with the commissioners, the way to do that is through the Q&A function on Zoom. The chat has been disabled during this meeting for attendees, but attendees can ask questions through the Q&A. And if we see a question that we're able to answer, we will certainly answer it. That's it.
Okay. Dan, did you have any announcements?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Randy.
Okay. All right. Any other announcements, Abe, that we should consider from the attendees? You see anything there? I see somebody has raised their hand.
So there is a person from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Ms. Adams, Denise Adams, and Magdalena Acevedo are here and they just wanted to introduce themselves.
Okay. All right. We'll begin then the substantive part of the meeting. The first item on the agenda is discussion of the impact of the coronavirus public health emergency on Chevy Chase businesses and steps to provide relief. And Jerry has been in close contact with a lot of the businesses in the community and has been trying to help them through a number of their problems. So Jerry, you want to describe what the impact has been and what can be done to help them?
Sure, and I'm going to be looking at notes here, so if you see me reading, that's why. So first thing I'd like to talk about are the restaurants. Most of them are in Commissioner Bradfield's SMD, but I've been going to a lot of them, talking to them, and a few things that I've found out that I'd like to share with people. So first off, in the beginning of April, the National Restaurant Association did a national survey of 5,000 restaurants, and they found that 44% were closed now, temporarily, 3% closed permanently, and they estimated another 11% might shutter for good by the end of April. So we're very fortunate looking at those numbers. 6 of our 8 local restaurants, that's not counting Starbucks or Subway, 6 of the other 8 are open now. They are open for delivery and pickup. And one of them that isn't open, Capital Crab, is actually merged with the Avenue and has a combined menu. So it's really almost 7 out of 8. So we're very fortunate. Macon is the only one that's closed right now. And so we're very fortunate that we still have a lot of businesses, restaurants that are open, that are still trying to serve the community, stay in business, employ some people, and so on. The DC Small Business Micro Recovery Grants, turned out that I'm aware of 11 of our small businesses applied for those. As we've heard, about 7,600 businesses across DC applied for them. 1,600 were removed from that role for various reasons. Sole proprietor, independent contractor, things like that. So of the 5,700, DC has estimated that 2,000 will get something, and that something could be anywhere up to the max of 25,000, or more popularly reported about 10,000. There's 25 million to be had, and the deadline was April 1st. There's still no word on when they're going to be announced, although I would hope it would be very soon, since these restaurants, I think March 16th was the day that everybody had to close down, or March 17th. I know it was right around St. Patty's Day, because I was really looking forward to going to the Avenue that day. But so it's been about 6 weeks that they've been trying to hang on that way. As far as the PPP, small business program that a lot of large businesses have been getting money from the federal government, there were in DC area 3,253 DC-based organizations that submitted that were given money, and that totaled 1.2 billion. I only know of one, hopefully there's more, but I only know of one of our small businesses that were one of those 3,253 DC-based that were approved for that money. All of these come with some restrictions that some businesses weren't able to apply for. For instance, 50% of your employees had to be DC residents. 50% of the business had to be owned by a DC resident, and 40% of the gross receipts had to originate in DC. So that eliminated some of the businesses from being able to apply for the small business recovery grants. And there are other restrictions on the PPP that makes it very hard for some businesses to apply. It reopened today. Who knows what's going to happen, but we've all read the story, so we know that there's some difficulty in that. And the small businesses in our area have almost uniformly said they weren't getting any word about any of this directly until sometimes it was too late to do some things about. So that's where we stand in regard to that. Now, one thing that we're also very fortunate in, we have 6 entities that supply food to people, groceries or so on. Becky mentioned the farmers market, that's one of them. And of our others, Broad Branch, Magruder's, both have online ordering. One is, Broad Branch also has robot delivery. You've seen those little robots scurry around the neighborhood. And Magruder's curbside pickup to order online. Safeway and CVS have the food that they have there. And the only one of ours that's closed is the Fishery Seafood Market. And I've been in touch with them. The owners are both 70 years old. They're worried about opening up at this time. They still hope to open as things improve. So it's not like they're closed down permanently, but they're not going to open until things quiet down a bit. So that's where we are in terms of food things. As far as anything non-food, there are several that are closed, as we know. Gyms, yoga, hair salons, nail salons, and many other of our businesses in our ANC have modified their hours. They have modified how they're doing business. So they're trying as best as they can to stay in business. There are a couple of them that were planning to close in June or July, and hopefully they can open up again sometime before that happens. But I haven't heard of any other businesses that have decided to shutter up for good. If any of the other commissioners have heard of anything, please chime in. But that's what's going on with our businesses right now. I'll stop and see if anybody has any questions.
Jerry, is there anything that residents can do to help out that process? Obviously, if we could support those businesses through ordering takeout or delivery, that's going to be a big boon to them.
Well, we've ordered delivery, and I can tell you that it's like if you order from Blue 44, they put your food on a table outside, they go back in, pick up your food. That's very easy. Parthenon basically does the same thing, although somebody can come out and give it to you. So they're all Little Beast, The Avenue, Bread and Chocolate. They're all doing very, seems like safe pickup. And a couple of them are doing no contact delivery also. Although the hours for 3 of the places have been shortened already because they're just not getting the lunch crowd, for instance, that they had gotten. I think the only 2 that are open morning on are Little Beast and Bread and Chocolate. And a couple of them have one day that they're closed during the week. But in addition to that, they're all selling gift certificates or gift cards. And I know we've bought several of them and they're very appreciative of that. We just have to, count on that this is something that can help them through these tough times. And the more people that are able to do that, it's not an easy thing to do, but the more people that are able to do that, the better it is for the businesses. And like I said, a lot of these other businesses have changed their models. So for instance, Child's Play, taking people through their store, sort of a concierge experience. People can pick things out when they're looking on an iPad or some other tablet. They'll talk to you about things to do. Many of the others, Monarch Paint, curbside service for people that have those kinds of needs. CVS is supposedly, although I haven't heard all positive things about it, prescription delivery for DC residents. So there's some things that people might not know about, but these options are available to us. We're very lucky, as I said, to have a community of businesses that are trying very hard to stay as part of the community, but it's up to us to do what we can to participate with them, to encourage them staying open and serving the community.
Jerry, we should also probably give a compliment to Safeway. It seems that they have been doing a very good job. The manager in particular has done a good job of communicating. I'm certainly on the Chevy Chase listserv. And there have been some complaints along the way, but I think he's been very responsive in dealing with those and trying to maintain a safe environment for both employees and for patrons.
Right, that's their most recent manager.
Yeah.
He's not new anymore. He's been there maybe about 10 months now, Tom Weaver. And he is very responsive. He responds to everybody. You're right, there have been some complaints. There are complaints about everything all the time. But they are trying. It's, as we know, small aisles. It's hard to shop in there, much like CVS has small aisles. I might add that both Safeway and CVS, Safeway 2 days a week and CVS only for 1 hour of one day, I think it's Wednesdays from 9 to 10, they have restricted hours for vulnerable populations. So that helps as well.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions or comments? Okay, Abe, anything on the chat, or I see someone's raised their hand.
Erica and anyone else who'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you should use the Q&A function on your Zoom. As I mentioned earlier, but if you're just joining us, we've disabled the chat function, and the way to communicate with commissioners is via the Q&A function.
Okay.
There are no open questions right now, but if anyone has any, we can always come back to them.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the discussion of the resources that are available to residents during the coronavirus public health emergency. And again, Jerry has been doing a really terrific job on his website of assembling all of those resources in one place. And I think that's been a real asset for the whole community. Jerry, you want to describe what resources are available?
It's almost like what resources aren't available. I think most of our agencies and the DC government has done a very good job of making resources available to people. And these range, and I'm just looking at notes on a different screen right now. They range from a lot of things for seniors, for people with, let's see, there are things in terms of, I'm just looking at some of these things here. The Department of Behavioral Health has some help that they're providing through phone lines. Department on Disability Services has things going on also. So there are a lot of these resources from almost every one of our our agencies, which is, you know, a very positive thing. Different council members, I know Mary Che's newsletter that she puts out, which is, I don't even know I think I saw Dee was on this call. She probably knows how often it comes out, but it's chock full of useful information. Alyssa Silverman has the same kind of newsletter that's full of excellent information. If I'm not mentioning people, it's not because for any reason other than everybody's really trying to step up to provide this kind of information. One of the things that people might not know about because it changes often, there are now 10 different public testing sites for COVID-19, and there are 2 additional member-specific testing sites, Kaiser Permanente and One Medical, that are providing testing. So it's becoming a lot more prevalent. And I read today that CVS is trying to ramp up in-store swab testing. So that's another resource that might be available sometime soon in the DC area. I don't know of any right now, but that's something that hopefully will come up pretty soon. As far as resources and learning about health-related activities, they're on the coronavirus.dc.gov site. There's always lots of good information. I know that the mayor puts out something. If it's not every day, it's every other day, her daily briefing, which includes a lot of useful information, as well as, you know, it includes things like ICU beds available, ventilators available, really trying to keep people abreast of the information. I can say that, and I'll just point this out, through yesterday, there were 18,416 tests given in DC. That only represents 2.6% of the total DC population. It's very hard to make inferences based on 2.6% of the total population, but that's where we are right now. We have a lot more testing capability than we're taking advantage of from what I understand. But the number of people that have tested positive out of the number of tests given is over 21%, which is very high. It shouldn't be that high, but because we haven't had as many tests given as we should have, that's one of the reasons it's so high. And unfortunately, the mortality rate, people that have lost their lives out of the positive tests is 4.8%, which is very high, 7th highest in the country. So that's just, you know, we could have 2 hours and just going through all the different websites, all the different hotlines that are available, but a lot of this information is available. I know you, Randy, myself, other commissioners have posted things on Nextdoor and on the Chevy Chase listserv, letting people know about these things as soon as we can. A lot of the agencies themselves post things on those 2 social media platforms as well. So there's no shortage of things that are available to people.
Let me mention as well that ANC commissioners across the city have organized a video conference every Monday, and we've been having those now for, I guess, about 5 or 6 weeks, and about 40 or 50 commissioners participate in that, and that's been a very good way to learn what other commissions are doing now, what kinds of problems they've experienced. I found them to be, this exchange of information has been very useful. Also, we had several people from the district government including Councilmember Robert White and several of the heads of agencies who have also spoken at those meetings. So that's been a good way for us to learn about what the district is doing and what other ANCs, how other ANCs are approaching the various problems that have arisen. And I think this is should be a model for what we do in the future in terms of exchanging information among ANCs, which has been sorely lacking in the past. But there's going to be another one of those meetings at 8 o'clock tonight, and if we finish in time, I plan to join that as well.
One other thing I did fail to mention, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, there's a district economy recovery team business town hall. So hopefully there will be more information to be learned at that meeting about the micro grants that DC is giving out.
Yeah, there have been council members who also, and agencies that have held telephone town halls. Councilmember Bonds had one last week for seniors. There have been a lot of different efforts to reach out to people. I will mention one other thing too that I've been impressed with during this period. There are a lot of agencies, almost all the agencies are operating remotely now. Everyone is working from home, but I have found them to be remarkably responsive. And whenever I had a concern or a problem, I reached out to people that I've dealt with in the past at those agencies, and they had responded very quickly and very effectively in a lot of instances. So I think the government it's been a handicap, obviously, to have to work remotely, but people have been doing a very good job of adapting to that, I think. Anyone else, any commissioners have any other comments, questions? Abe, anything on the Q&A?
So we received two questions from Erica Nunez, one about whether the newsletters and resources that were mentioned can be linked in the meeting notes, and they will be in the meeting minutes. And then the second question, which I'll answer in just a second, is there more information about confirmed COVID cases on a more granular level? To my knowledge, the most granular level is by ward, and there's also some information broken down by race, but not at the ANC or SMD level. And that information is at coronavirus.dc.gov. And Ms. Nunez also wanted to flag a couple of existing resources, which I'll acknowledge by answering the question, and I'll also make sure to get into the minutes too.
There's one other piece of information that's also available out there. I know we have a number of senior retirement communities in our neighborhood, and they have been collecting and publishing data on the number of COVID cases in those retirement communities and the number of deaths as well. So I mean, that's been, I think the city has been relatively transparent in this process in providing data. It's not always in exactly the format that at least I would prefer, and maybe not all of the information that we would like to have, but they've been providing quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. One other piece of information that coronavirus.dc.gov has, and which is pretty revealing, is they have a breakout of positive tests by age. And whereas everybody thinks that this is, it affects seniors more than anybody else, 54% of positive tests are people 50 years or younger. So 46% over 50, 54% under 50. So it's not just one segment of the population that seems to be accounting for most of those positive tests.
I saw that the mayor said today that a 17-year-old died from coronavirus either yesterday or today. So you're absolutely right, Jerry. It is not limited to one group. Although it's clear also that the African-American community has been hit extremely hard, much harder than other communities.
49%, I think, is the total there.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments from commissioners, questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the ANC's activities, how the ANC's activities are impacted by the health emergency, and specifically the community center modernization and the proposed revisions to the comprehensive plan. I will add one more to that, and that is the impact of the recently released budget from the mayor, which just came out today. Chris, do you want to talk about the community center modernization and where we stand on that?
Sure. I think the modernization has been dealt a setback. You know, we were on hold when the coronavirus hit, and we were on hold because there wasn't enough money to build the basic program that we had proposed, and obviously we're not going to get any more money with the hole in the district government's budget. I really think that the project's been probably dead for at least a year. And then the big question is, you know, how does it come back? You know, with the proposed upzoning of Upper Connecticut Avenue, that site was proposed to have apartments and be combined with the library as a denser parcel. And I suspect that if the job comes back, there may be some changes to the program and maybe some addition to the apartments, something like that. But we'll see what happens. There's no point speculating. But we never had the meeting with the director of DPR that we requested. I think everybody's busy doing other things right now. So I wouldn't expect to hear anything, at least until the crisis is over.
Well, the impact of the budget cuts is going to be revenue loss, basically. That's what's driving all of this. The revenue loss is going to be really very, very substantial to the city. The announcement last week from the chief financial officer was that the revenues for the remaining 5 months of 2020, the revenue loss is going to be $720 million, which is staggering to be only in 5 months. And so I think they're just going to be cutting back everything to the bare bones. I don't think we're going to see any additional expenditures for any programs in this year. And then they're projecting that it's going to be an $800 million revenue loss for fiscal year 2021. And those are just really pretty staggering numbers. And even though the district does have a $1.4 billion rainy day fund, and of course this certainly is a rainy day, they can't use all of that, and I'm sure they will not want to use all of that, but some of that perhaps can be used to cover some of that revenue loss. The key thing is going to be to see what the mayor's budget looks like. That's going to come out on May 12th. And then we'll be able to make some judgments about what programs are going to get cut, what programs are going to get hurt in the process. And all of that, by the way, is just, those are just estimates from the chief financial officer. It could be worse than that. It hopefully might be better than that. But I think it's going to be a time of considerable austerity with the DC budget over the next year and a half, certainly. And hopefully we can come back after that. So that's going to obviously affect the community center. Now, that with regard to the comprehensive plan, the Office of Planning has been moving ahead, getting out its revisions to the comprehensive plan. And they released those last Thursday. It's 1,600 pages of redlined changes to the comprehensive plan. Unfortunately, they didn't redline it against their last proposal, which was in October, but rather against the original comprehensive plan, which makes it very difficult to identify exactly what they changed from October. But I've been going through it carefully, not as thoroughly as I need to. But there are a few things that did jump out that are changes in the comprehensive plan. Now, whether any of this is going to get implemented is a different question, because again, it's going to be impacted by the budget problems as well, and the drop in the economy. I mean, frankly, we're going to be in a recession for at least probably the rest of this year, and probably a good part of next year. We're going to be in a recession, and that's going to mean that development's not going to occur. There's not going to be new buildings built. There's not going to be anything that's going to get done. The other thing that's going to constrain the comprehensive plan is the council is not holding hearings now. Anything that they're going to do is going to be electronic, at least through the summer, I suspect. And I don't know when they're going to get to any kind of discussion of the comprehensive plan. That's the stage where it is right now. It's gone from the mayor officially to the council, and they will have to look at it at some point. And I would hope that they're going to hold hearings that are going to be effective and going to actually consider comments from the community, but we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. The biggest change that affects the recommendations that our commission had, and by the way, they've gone through and they've given us a table of each of the ANC's comments and what the Office of Planning has done with those comments. They either say they accepted them, or they acknowledge them, which means they say that, well, we've already covered that in some other fashion and we don't need to deal with it now. Or for some of the recommendations that we made, they just flat out said no. And that's a pretty cryptic description in each instance, and it's a little hard to discover from what they've done exactly what that means. But one of the things that they say that they have accepted is to create some planning process for what we call the Chevy Chase Gateway, so that there will be a community participation in the process, and we can come up with what the community expects the development to be in that corridor from Chevy Chase Circle to Livingston Street. That's reflected on the general, what is it called? The map. The generalized policy map. And it now identifies the business district that we were talking about from Chevy Chase Circle to Livingston Street as a Main Street mixed use corridor. That's a new term they have in this revision. And that corridor is now part of a much larger future planning area analysis that extends from the Circle all the way to Cleveland Park, and about 2 blocks on either side of Connecticut Avenue. And that future planning analysis area, those are defined as areas of large tracts or corridors where future analysis is anticipated to ensure adequate planning for equitable growth. Boundaries are shown for illustrative purposes, so it could be more or less than these boundaries. And the final boundaries will be determined as part of the future analysis process. Planning analyses could usually include, they say, but are not limited to, small area plans, which is what we really wanted the Office of Planning to support, and other things such as development frameworks, technical studies, retail strategies, or design guidelines. And they say that such analysis should precede any significant zoning change in this area. And that's certainly a point that we wanted. We wanted to ensure that there wouldn't be any major changes in that area before we've gotten a small area plan. That's our ideal. And as they say, this planning process should evaluate current infrastructure and utility capacity against the full build out and projected population growth, and that planning should focus on issues most relevant to the community that can be effectively addressed through the neighborhood planning process. So all of those are things that we can support. I'm just concerned still that it might be something less than a small area plan, which I think is the ideal of what we're looking for, is something that's going to be binding. It's going to be approved ultimately by the council. And those are things I think we should continue to support and push for. I was very surprised that they did not, however, designate the Connecticut Avenue entrance into the district as a gateway. And we had specifically requested that, and that was one of the things they just said no to. And I don't think there's any rationale for doing that. Clearly that should be a gateway. Now, the bigger question, I guess, is what should the Office of Planning be doing now with regard to the comprehensive plan? Should we even be continuing this process now? The Office of Planning says that they're planning to do another comprehensive plan, a completely different kind of comprehensive plan, much shorter, much less detailed, in 2025, which is, by the time this is passed, it's going to be 4 years away or less. And moreover, we don't really know what the impact of this recession is going to be on future growth of the city. Maybe the assumptions that are being made now on the comprehensive plan need to be reassessed in light of the substantially changed economic condition. And I'm wondering now whether we should recommend to the council that this process just be postponed, and that we focus instead on getting perhaps an earlier version of this less detailed, more policy-oriented planning document from the Office of Planning before 2025, rather than going through the torturous process of looking again at 1,600 pages of an overly detailed comprehensive plan. So I think that's something that we ought to consider as the council begins to take this up and make whatever recommendations we might want to make to the council. Any other comments? Jerry, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, first, I want to say that I'm not a bit surprised that nothing that we suggested or recommended was addressed. And we did a lot of work on that. We met with a lot of people. And so I don't think that anything that we would say now could even approach the amount of work that we did on this originally. So if they didn't listen to us before, why should they listen to us now? So
it is going to be a different group of people listening, though, just council
right,
rather.
But I think whatever contact we had with OP, that's over and done with.
Right.
We don't need to deal with them anymore. And I think it's this whole timing of this planning process is beyond ridiculous. The mayor just announced a reopened DC advisory group that includes real estate and construction, transportation and infrastructure, all the things that we talked about, small business and retail. And their final report is due to her May 11th, the day before her budget is supposed to be submitted, which comes a couple of weeks after she submitted this comprehensive plan. So I don't know if they're just juggling balls and whichever one shows up first is what they put first in the planning process. But take that along with a $750,000 budget shortfall, and I have no idea what they're trying to do right now. I would think you need to first get DC back up on its feet before you could start talking about a comprehensive plan that if anything, unless this reopened DC advisory group is just a name only, a lot of what they have to say would inform any future comprehensive plan or planning of any kind. So I think it should just be pulled back right now and see what needs to be done to get DC back up on its feet. But I think dealing with OP is not even something we should consider. And now that it's at the council, if we do anything, that's where our focus should be on.
I agree completely, Jerry. I think, in fact, I asked an informational issue from OP after we got this proposal and thought about, do I challenge them on some of these things that they've done? No, they're out of the process now. They're really out of the process. And this is only before the council now. And so I think all of our energies should be focused on that. And we've had some good meetings with council members that were very supportive. And I think we can get more as well. But I think we ought to really think hard about whether, as I suggested, this is all sort of a futile process now anyway, because we don't know enough to be able to make intelligent decisions about planning. And we won't know enough for at least several months, if not the end of the year. Abe, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just had two questions about the comprehensive plan. I think, first of all, do we have any idea about when the DC Council will be looking at this?
They won't do anything on it until after they're finished with the budget. And the
Right.
budget's not going to be done until, because they're getting it late, I can't believe the budget will be done before the end of June.
Right.
They typically take a recess then in the summer, and I would be astounded if they did anything at all on the comprehensive plan until sometime in the fall. I know OP is pushing them, and the mayor is probably pushing them to complete this by the end of the year so that they don't have a different council after January 1st. But I don't know whether they'll do it or not. It's, like I said, it's 1,600 pages. It's extraordinarily complex. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to be very interested in what the council does. So I don't think it's happening for a while.
Okay. And then my next question is, what is our plan to make public the response that we received from the Office of Planning outside of sharing some of the takeaways in this meeting?
Oh, we should definitely put it on our website, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's relatively short. It's very, very tiny print, but it's short. And
Okay.
I don't think it will inform people a lot. It didn't inform me a lot. I still don't understand some of the reasons why they said no to the things we said no to. But yeah, we should put it up on our website.
Okay. All right. And then I think the only other thing I would say about, not the comprehensive plan, but the community center is, I think I definitely empathize with the fear around where the budget is, where revenues are, and all these kind of doom and gloom that we've been hearing. And I don't doubt the reality of it at all, but I do think it's important that we continue to make it clear how important this project is to our community and to the people that we represent. And even if we understand that there are other projects that are equally or potentially more important, it's important that we make it clear how important this project is. It's one that's been in the works for a long time. It's one that a lot of community input has been provided on. And I think ultimately one that's been a long time coming. And I'm not convinced yet, just from seeing a revenue estimate, that it's not something that can move forward. And I've seen the revenue estimate, and I'm not convinced that it should move forward. So I think we should continue to work to have that happen.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the budget looks like when the mayor brings it out, and whether this gets cut as part of the budget, and what may well, which means we would have to go to the council and try to get it restored, which I think we should certainly do. And talking about the budget, I do think the plan now from the council, as I understand it, is that they're going to hold hearings, but they're not going to be even virtual hearings. They're just going to be paper hearings, essentially, that you submit your testimony in writing. And they're going to do that, I'm afraid, at a very accelerated pace after the mayor's budget comes out on May 12th. That may give us very little time to actually analyze the budget before the hearings are conducted, or so-called hearings. And so we really need to step into that process. It's going to require some effort on our part to do that. But I don't think we can stand by and just let it happen to us. Now, the real key problem is the one Chris pointed out, though, is that what they've said now is that the amount of money currently appropriated is 2/3, less than 2/3 of what we need. We need a lot more. And that's going to be the real problem, I think, is getting any more. And then we've got to make a decision. Do we take a community center that's going to be, in some respects, even less than what we have right now? And then, but because we're not going to get it changed in the future, we're not going to get an addition put onto the community center at some later point. Or do we try to find some other creative way to address this? But what the department, or what DPR's Department of Parks and Recreation has told us, though, is that what we've got right now is not going to be adequate to do the job we think it needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay.
There are two questions from residents if there are no other comments from commissioners.
Okay, questions from residents?
Erica asked about whether individuals have to, this is not related to the community center comprehensive plan, but whether residents have to request an absentee ballot or if they're being automatically mailed in DC. In DC, they are not being automatically mailed. Residents do need to request them. I'll put the link in the chat right now to anyone who's interested, and we'll make sure it's also in the minutes. There will still be election sites in person, but we are encouraging, and the government's encouraging everyone to vote by mail and request an absentee ballot. And then secondly, Lisa G said, is there citizen participation on the Open DC advisory group? The list of people who are on the various committees is on the corona.dc.gov website. Many of the people are DC residents and citizens, and it seems that there's some plan to do some sort of outreach to residents, but you can see the full list of the different people on the different committees at that website.
In that same vein, Abe, I've asked the commissioners who are meeting in this meeting that starts right now, whether any ANC commissioners are on that task force, those committees that the mayor has appointed. And I looked through them briefly, very, very briefly, but I couldn't see anybody that I recognized as an ANC commissioner. And so I really think that would be a terrible omission if there are no commissioners on those various groups. I mean, the ones, for instance, on restarting small businesses, that seems to me just got to have somebody from the ANCs speaking on behalf of those communities. But I will perhaps know more after this 8 o'clock meeting that will include commissioners from all over the city. Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, well, we appreciate everyone's participation tonight. That concludes our substantive portion of our meeting. We do have one item on our business, and that is to adopt our minutes from the March 9th, 2020 meeting. And those minutes have been posted on our website and sent out to the listservs. Any changes or modifications anyone wants to make in the minutes? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Becky, you still on mute?
Aye.
Okay, all right. Unanimous then. Thank you, Becky. I don't know what we're going to do about a next meeting. I would think that we're going to have to meet certainly when the budget comes out. There are going to be a lot of things we need to talk about then. Our next scheduled meeting is, I believe, on the 11th of May. And we'll consider in the next week or so whether that makes sense to have that meeting or whether we should postpone that meeting until after or defer it until after the budget comes out. We may even need to act more quickly depending on what the hearings are that the council is going to have on the budget. But I think right now we sort of have to be flexible, as all of us have to be during this process, and decide whether we need to have a meeting and when. But this has gone, I thought, quite well. And Ava, thank you very much for your co-hosting on it. I think that's been really helpful. And you know, we ran several tests on this before we tried it, and I think it's worked. That was beneficial. And if anybody who's an attendee has any comments or suggestions about the process that we've used, don't hesitate to contact us. You can send an email to me at 3g03@anc.dc.gov, or to any of the commissioners, and let us know how you think this process went, whether we should make changes or expand it in some way. But we do want to make sure that we've communicated with the community as best we can, while at the same time protecting the security of our meetings. And fortunately, we've been successful at that. So, okay, anything else anyone wants to add?
I just want to add, I think this meeting went pretty well, all things considered. I mean,
Yeah.
question and answer seems to work well. I mean, people can get their questions online and get an answer, and I think it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, we will adjourn. Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So long.
Have a good night, everyone.